Hello, thank you for joining me for the Dear Sam Help Horsemanship Series. And it is Friday, so this is a new post. And this week, I wanted to continue the discussion talking about pressure, but in the realities of leading a horse and trying to get a horse to load in a horse trailer and horses that won't go forward, and how that all relates to pressure. Because I find many times that when people are finally asking for help with their horse or some guidance or some support, they've really waited until the horse has become very dramatic, possibly dangerous in its behavior, to where the handler or the rider can no longer be hopeful about maybe getting things to work with the horse, and so now people are asking for help. And unfortunately, we get very distracted by thinking about the big moments as being the issue or the problem with our horse. So like, my horse won't go forward, or my horse won't load in the trailer, or my horse loads halfway in the trailer but he won't bring his hind end in, or maybe my horse explodes when he tries to unload out of the trailer and I can't stop him. All of these things are symptoms, and I know that it's hard to put it together depending on how you're looking at what behaviors the horse is offering you. So my goal is to perhaps offer you some alternative insight to where you can start to break things down and you don't get distracted by the big moments. So in last week, talking about just having a raised awareness of pressure, and even learning to consider when we may, as humans, be imposing pressure on horses and not even realizing it. Because if we're doing something and we don't even realize we're having an effect on the horse, or we're seeing the horse respond in a certain way, but we're assigning human emotions to it, then we're really limiting the ability to believe the horse and to communicate clearly with the horse, because we're adding this human filter of emotion of like, this is why my horse is doing X, Y, and Z. And often the stories that people tell themselves in their head, or the justification or the explanation, really is inaccurate. That story is about the human, and it often has nothing to do with the horse. So I'm about to embark on a 1,400-mile journey. I've been doing this journey between the Canadian and Mexico border for 18 years now. That's a lot of driving. And usually when I haul, I have anywhere between 2 and 10 horses, never mind all the other animals that come with me. And, it's one of those journeys where even if that may not be part of your regular life and interaction with your horse, that if it was something that you had to do with your horse, where you had to load and unload in multiple occasions in various new places, your horse had to stand tied, your horse had to adapt to new scenery, there are so many pieces and parts that we could work on in our everyday life that would set up hauling a horse in that type of scenario for success. And this isn't just about hauling horses, but this comes back to the concept of pressure. So what I want you to think about is when you go to interact with your horse, and in the context of being on the ground and leading your horse, and again, everything you do from the ground with your lead rope translates to the quality and the effectiveness of when you use your reins in the saddle. So if we're starting off going, well, I just walk in, I halter my horse, and I just kind of pull him along with me, and he seems to follow most of the time, and sometimes he kind of slows down and he gets heavy on the lead rope, and sometimes he walks too fast, but he's not too bad, let's keep going. You've missed an amazing opportunity for you to be able to offer the horse a conversation where you start to become specific, clear, and intentional. So something I want you to think about is, how often do you actually give your horse specific direction as far as this is where you want him to be looking and focused before you ask him to move? And then you check in to see if he's even looking or focused at whatever your desired destination is. And then how specific are you when you ask him to move forward? And, it sounds pretty basic and like not a big deal. We're just leading our horses. We're just having our horse stand still for tacking or mounting or whatnot. But all of these moments are pretty significant to the horse. And the more gray area you are, and people are often in the gray in life in general, but certainly with their horses, thinking that they're being polite, like that's good enough, so I'll take that. And they think they're doing, offering kindness to the horse and not being specific. It actually leaves the horse without support. And the less support that the horse has, the faster he's going to be in taking over in his thinking and then his physical behaviors, and in protecting himself and in taking over. And then it feels like you're just reacting to all of this unwanted chaos from the horse. So I want you to start to think about, if you're not ever really specific on the ground in just the basic interactions with your horse, can you really have a standard when you're in the saddle? And how does your horse know when you sort of have no standard on the ground, perhaps, and then you're suddenly having all these expectations when you're in the saddle? It's not really fair to the horse. And it teaches the horse to become defensive towards you because you're inconsistent in how you interact with him. So back to this upcoming trip that I have, just something to think about is, what are all the different pieces that we could practice at home? And I don't mean practice as far as repetitiously going through behaviors. I mean practice what I call the conversation. So when you offer specific direction to your horse's brain for him to focus, you address if there's any emotional stress or defensiveness, and then you ask for quality soft physical behavior. What are all the pieces that you would need if you were traveling across the country with your horse? And if perhaps you had that standard that you were working towards all the time, even if you never took that road trip with your horse, you'd probably have a very different interaction and quality partnership because of your clarity and intention and specificity and communication. Remember, if you don't offer that to the horse, there's no way that the horse is just going to randomly show up one day and offer it to you. So think of the moments where maybe if you have a horse that doesn't like to go forward, whether it's on the ground or from the saddle, you have a horse that doesn't want to cross water, doesn't want to line up to the mounting block, doesn't want to load in the trailer, doesn't want to cross the tarp. These are all symptoms. None of them are the issues. And so we have to step back and say, how are we communicating? And the way in which we're communicating, are we using pressure that is making the horse defensive? And I'll give you a hint. If you are using a lead rope and your horse is already hanging on it and dragging you sideways, or trying to take off and surge past you, or balking and not coming forward when you're asked, then the answer is yes, your horse is defensive towards your tools in which you're using to communicate. And so if he's already defensive towards those tools, and it feels like it's not working in what you're asking of him, and then you try and add more pressure when he's already feeling contained or driven and fearful and defensive towards the pressure you're initially using, it's like adding fuel to the fire. It's only going to make things worse. And you may sneak through a situation once or twice, but if we're looking at the long term, that every scenario of interaction with the horse is building for the future, then if every time you're showing up, the way in which you're communicating using pressure is causing a defensiveness in the horse, you're teaching him to be fearful. You're teaching him to jump up the scale of reactiveness from 0 to 60 in a very short time. You're teaching your horse to be intolerant because everything that you're doing is adding more pressure and concern and potentially fear to the interaction between you and him. And so he's going to do what he needs to do to take care of himself. So thank you for joining me. A lot of information here. Be sure to subscribe so that next Friday when I upload the next video where we talk about raising your awareness and raising your specificity and your clarity of how you're interacting with your horse and to get different responses, be sure to join me. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.